Good afternoon, class. It's Mr. Sargent here with your Day 41 recap video for ELA and for science today. Now in ELA, we're going to be talking about the king. Now we're going to be talking about how to describe a king, how to use adjectives, and pretty much what we already know about kings. And then we're going to read the story, The Monkey and the Peas. Now with this, we do have a pop quiz that I'm going to send you the link for in the description below, and we'll talk about that later. In science today, we're going to be talking about how to do a lab report. It may not be the most exciting thing, but it's something that we definitely need to learn. And with all of these things, these are all lessons that are going to help us later on. So let's go ahead and get started. So when I say the word the king, what words come to mind? If you were going to use some adjectives to describe what a king is and what a king does, maybe what a king looks like, well, what adjectives would you use? Now, if you remember, we've already talked about nouns. Nouns are a person, place, or thing. The king is the noun. How they act is going to be the verb. What I'm looking for is the adjective. What are some adjectives that we can use to describe a king? Now, some people, when they think of a king, think of a good king. And you think about what a good king does. A good king is wise. A good king takes care of their subjects. A good king looks out for their kingdom, fights for it. Now, an evil king, well, they make the wrong choices, don't they? So the reason why we wanted to use this, other than to review and study adjectives, is because our story today talks about a king that, well, definitely learns a lesson. So let's go ahead and read The Monkey and the Peas together. Let's read together the story, The Monkey and the Peas. Now, this is a folk tale from India. Now, India is a country in Asia, and in class today, we talked a lot about the different facts about India. So I encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, to do research about the Indian culture, what India is like, maybe some of the foods that they eat, because the food is really good. So I encourage you to learn more about India. This story is a folk tale, so this will be told from generation to generation, from family to family. All right? So let's go ahead and get started. Once upon a time, there was a king who loved to travel, but he didn't like to visit places in his own country. He thought that more beautiful sights could only be seen in other lands. One day, the king and his army were riding their horses through another strange land. When they became tired, they set up a camp to rest. The horses were hungry, so the soldiers fed them peas. I love peas, by the way. It's one of my favorite vegetables. And according to the story, it's some of the horses' favorite vegetables too. Paragraph 3. A monkey who lived in the forest was watching the king's men from a high tree. He saw the horses eating peas, so he jumped down from the tree to get some of the peas for his dinner. He quickly filled his mouth and hands with peas. Then he climbed back up the tree. There he sat down to eat the peas. Paragraph 5. As he ate the peas, one pea fell from his hand to the ground. The monkey dropped all the peas he had in his hand. He ran down to look for the lost pea. The monkey could not find the one lost pea. The other peas the monkey had dropped rolled away. He climbed up the tree again and lay on its trunk, looking sad. The monkey was very disappointed. The king was watching the monkey from the camp. He said to himself, "To get one pea, that monkey threw away the rest. I would not be like this foolish monkey. He lost everything while trying to gain so little. I will go back to my own country. I will enjoy what I already have." So the king and his army rode back to their country. The king found many beautiful sights in his own land. So did you figure out the lesson? Well, the lesson that the king learned was found in paragraph 7. And I'm going to quote, "I would not be like this foolish monkey. He lost everything while trying to gain so little. I will go back to my own country. I will enjoy what I already have." So the king learned to appreciate something that he already had. He thought he had to travel all around the world to see beauty when really he had beauty in his own country. I compare that to when I was younger and I would have a box full of toys that I would have and I would play with it, I would collect. But when I saw a commercial for that newest toy, I just had to go out and have it and get it, forgetting all the toys that I already had. What I learned from here is we need to appreciate some of the things we already have. We need to be thankful that we have a box of toys that we can play with, because there are some people out there that don't have that. We need to be thankful for everything that we already have while still working for things that we want. But most of all, just to appreciate what we already have around us. Now, after we did this, we took a quiz. Now, you can find that link to that quiz in the description below. Now, it's only going to be open for another 3 or 4 days. Take it once, take it twice, take it 3 times. Go for it. I'd love to see if you were paying attention to some of the lessons that were taught in this story. As a reminder, don't forget your fables are due tomorrow. Ladies and gentlemen, I cannot wait to both hear your stories, read your stories, and see your incredible artwork tomorrow. Also tomorrow we have our spelling test, which I know you guys have been studying for all week. I really look forward to seeing your success and sharing your success with you. Now in Science today was a work day. Now some days we do experiments, some days we do projects. Today was a work day. Now, what we're going to be working on today is discussing and writing down our information for the things that we learned from our experiment yesterday. Now, if you remember, we did an experiment dealing with the different densities of liquids. We learned quite a bit that we're going to explain in a minute. But for this part of the video, what I want to do is explain to you how to fill out a lab report. So if you notice, this lab report has a few boxes that we have to fill out. Now, I will say this, if you cannot type it on Google Classroom, feel free to copy it down into your notes, take a picture of it, and send it to me via Class Dojo. In our top box, at the very top, you see the title or the name of the experiment. This is called the density experiment. Pretty simple title. And then we go through in our next box, and that is the materials. Now, if you look at what we need to do this experiment, and you think back at all the materials that we used, this is where you would list them. Now, we can put down the water, the oil, the container to put it all in, the food coloring, which is optional, and the flashlight, it's optional as well. I don't think I put that on the list behind me, but we could also put that as part of our materials. Next, we have our procedures or our steps for our experiment. Now, every experiment has steps or directions that you need to follow. In this case, if you look, step 1 is going to be we put the water in the container. Step 2, we put the oil in the container. Pretty simple. Step 3, we put the food coloring in the container. Now that step is definitely optional if you used food coloring. Step 4 is you shake it up. Now I would say put the cover on top of the container first, because if not, it is going to go everywhere. And that is a big mess to clean up. And then finally, make observations. And we're going to talk about what observations are in a little bit. So before you even do your experiment, you need to make a hypothesis. Now, what is a hypothesis, you may ask? It is a guess. You are going to guess what happens in our experiment. What is going to happen when we put the oil in the water? What's going to happen when we put the food coloring in? What's going to happen when we shake it up? There are so many what ifs. And that's where we put that down in the hypothesis. So we talked about 3 possible choices. Now, if you remember my video from yesterday, you remember that I did mention the 3 choices that we have, the three possible outcomes. Outcome number one is that the oil would sink to the bottom and the water would float to the top. Choice number two is the oil would float to the top and the water would sink to the bottom. And option three is they just mix up together and you wouldn't be able to tell if it was water or oil. If you have any other possible outcomes, feel free to put that in your hypothesis. Now, the great thing about the hypothesis is, can you be wrong? Yes! It's actually great to be wrong in your hypothesis because through the experiment, we are going to be able to prove if we're right or wrong. And if the experiment works, we're going to gain that great information. Even if it doesn't work, we're still going to get great information to go back and change the experiment to get a different outcome. All right? So that is a hypothesis. Then we get to observations. Observations are, what do you notice? What do you see? What are the results? What happened? So if you remember what happens in the experiment, this is where you're going to write down what happened. You're also going to probably say, hey, I was right. This happened. All right? And our final box is the conclusion. Now, just like in any story, the conclusion is the ending. But for science, your conclusion is what you learned. It is important to write down what you learned in this. I should see the words density somewhere in there. Which one is more dense, the oil or the water? How do you know? Here's the thing, though experiments are fun, we're meant to do these to learn things, not just to make a mess, though making a mess is fun, not just to smash things, though smashing things are fun, not to just to dump water on my head, though that's fun. Well, for you guys, not for me, but still, we want to make sure that when we're doing an experiment, we're not just wasting time, that we actually are learning something, ladies and gentlemen. So this conclusion box is probably the most important to me. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know that you're learning something, and I want you to share it with me. Because here's the thing. When I teach a lesson, I'm giving that gift to you. Well, I want you to teach me something. I want you to share with me what you learned. I cannot wait to read your lab reports. I know you're going to do great. And that was it for day number 41. Before we go, I want to wish a very happy birthday to Egypt. Miss you today, but happy birthday, Egypt. I hope you are out celebrating and having a great time. Do not forget, tomorrow we have our spelling test, your fables are due, and I cannot wait to see your lab report. All right? So, have a great rest of the day, and until I see you again, have a great night.